the second part of the state capture report has recommended an investigation against Denel board members who allegedly appointed people who facilitated looting at the state arms manufacturer. Now, the Presidency received the report yesterday, which focuses on how Denel and Transnet were captured. Today, Denel struggles to pay its employees who've approached the courts to force the SOE to pay outstanding salaries. Newzroom Afrika senior reporter Tumaole was actually at the union buildings yesterday. He joins us in studio this morning. Tumaole, it's ironic, isn't it, that some 5 years ago you'd have said Denel was a leading SOE insofar as the management of his structures were concerned, compared to where it is now.
Absolutely, Michelle. And when you look at the leading SOE, it was actually one of the best performing SOEs in the particular field in the world. Many acclaimed awards that it won, and really gutted and looted to a state where it cannot pay salaries, and that's really a sad indictment. And when you look at what the report findings are in terms of how Denel was looted, it goes back to the issue of the management at ministerial level. Of course, Malusi Kigaba, Barbara Hogan, they were exchanged as ministers at the top of public enterprises at that particular time. The report also having some very disparaging findings for Kigaba and Hogan, saying that they've effectively facilitated state capture at Denel, as well as Transnet, as well as Eskom. Of course, Anoj Singh's name comes into the mind there, Brian Molefe. And these were all individuals that were moved around at key positions. The positions for, of course, Anoj Singh, CFO, he's been discredited since. And he was the one who was found during the State Capture Commission of Inquiry to have had regular meetings with the Guptas. In fact, bringing Gupta associate and lieutenant, so to speak, Salim Essa, onto premises that belonged to the state utilities, when Essa had no business being there. In
fact, you're talking about Salim Essa. This is a shocking number that's contained in this report. Known Gupta associate, that's how we describe him, isn't it? Known Gupta associate Salim Essa, among others, in total getting 7.3 billion, I said billion, and not million, worth of alleged kickbacks that his company and companies linked to the Guptas allegedly received, and that's just through their dealings with Transnet.
I mean, that is absolutely shocking. One wonders how Salim Essa managed to land himself in effectively one of the cushiest paydays perhaps in African history. This man had no particular credentials, no dealings, no official position with any of the government state entities. In fact, during the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, some of the administrators at the SOEs found themselves baffled as to what this man was doing at key meetings. Even some of the ministers who testified, I think Barbara Hogan also testified not to having direct dealings with Salim Essa, but saying that she had seen him in the corridors and passed him in the corridors at Transnet, and no one could answer what Salim Essa was doing there. So many questions about how Essa was given effectively an open door policy to come and sit in on key meetings, and also to chip in and to make recommendations and to make suggestions. We had some witnesses suggesting that Salim Essa would chip in conversations and say that Baba expected it. Who Baba was left to interpretation. Some of the executives that were being leaned on, and some of the people that were facilitating projects for Transnet and Eskom would then take that interpretation to suggest that it was an instruction from the sitting head of state at the time, Jacob Zuma.
And of course, the explanation that the acting Chief Justice also gives for why these people like Salim Essa were involved so intricately in the work of SOEs, why certain appointments were made. He says it can only be because the puppeteers, the people who were pulling the strings, were the Gupta family themselves.
Absolutely, Michelle. And what Salim Essa would effectively be doing is acting as an enforcer. He would be delivering a message that if you don't do what we want, you would face the consequences, or we will deal with you. This was some of the recurring themes that came out during the Commission of Inquiry. Interestingly enough, when you look at what happened at the SOEs, you have a situation where key executives, the position of CFO, the position of CEO, the position also of perhaps a COO, would then find themselves facing trumped-up charges and being suspended. Many of them were also questioned, interestingly enough, for accepting very generous paydays once they were hit with the disciplinary process, and they basically told the Commission of Inquiry, many of them, that they felt it was prudent for them to step aside. Deputy Chief Justice at the time, Acting Chief Justice now, Raymond Zondo, questioned very strongly why people would accept effectively golden handshakes to move out of the way when they were fighting disciplinary processes that could effectively absolve them. Many of them would say that they had seen what had happened to other executives at other institutions like Denel, for instance, who tried to challenge the process, who were summarily dismissed. Many of them saying that they even suffered post-traumatic stress disorder because they felt vested and couldn't see and handle seeing their institutions like Denel, which was gutted, basically going to the gutters.
And of course we know that the treatment that whistleblowers in our country get. We talk about it time and time again, that there just is no support for people who literally put their lives and livelihoods on the line to expose corruption. Absolutely. Let's go back to the issue of Denel, because Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown at the time, her name also comes up quite stark in the second part of the State Capture Inquiry report. And the Acting Chief Justice not mincing his words, insofar as the appointment of Daniel Mantsha to the chair of the Denel board is concerned. He says, surely a prudent minister would have nothing to do with bringing an attorney who had been struck off the roll of attorneys for something to do with his trust account into the board of an SOE. He wants to know, what is Lynn Brown's explanation for doing so? Did Daniel Mantsha have expertise that perhaps no one else had in a context where there are thousands of attorneys in Gauteng, according to the Acting Chief Justice?
Absolutely, and that would then suggest that the expertise that Mantsha would have brought to the table, according to how the wording is framed, would be an expertise that would allow for the facilitation of the capture.
The wrong kind of expertise.
Absolutely. And we look at, deals including the VR laser deal, where exactly Salim Essa's company basically found, or facilitated a deal for the export and the construction of the hulls. Now, hulls are very critical instruments when it comes to the armored vehicles that Denel was exporting to the world. That deal was something of a shame, really, because Essa then invoiced Denel, and those invoices were paid advance payments, and payments for work that, when really the books were opened up, was seemingly found for no work done. Denel also suffered irreparable international reputational damage due to those particular deals, and subsequent having to face lawsuits because it couldn't meet the requirements into those agreements met or agreed or entered into with one Salim Essa and VR Laser. VR Laser, interestingly enough, and this is where Jacob Zuma, the former president's son's name, comes into the mix, because he was found to be linked either as an executive to VR Laser in conjunction with Salim Essa and, of course, the other Gupta lieutenants, including the brothers themselves. In
fact, the Acting Chief Justice calling VR Laser a good cover story for the Gupta family to get their hands into the coffers of Denel. Really a heartbreaking story if you think about just the amounts of money lost to state capture, according to the State Capture Inquiry report. Tumaole is tracking that story very closely for us.